My mom and I will live in this home, so don't step foot here ever again. My husband yelled through the phone, and I resisted my urge to blow up on him. Just a few hours ago, my mother-in-law had said the same thing to me. He really was just like her. My name is Ava. I live with my husband Lucas in a high-rise apartment downtown. The nighttime scenery from our apartment on the 25th floor is really beautiful. I work from home, so living here makes me very happy. My husband works in sales, and he has to commute to work every day. He comes back home late, so I naturally take charge of the housework. Lucas is useless when it comes to chores. His hidden talent is making work for me. He doesn't even help bring the dishes to the sink after dinner. When he gets home, he throws his tie and dirty clothes all over the couch and doesn't put them away after. His balled up dirty socks look like snails living under the couch. After he finishes dinner, he spends the rest of the evening eating snacks and using his phone. Every time he lazes around and eats snacks on the sofa, his crumbs get everywhere, so by now the sofa is a mess. On the weekends, he spends all his time in front of the TV playing video games. He used to live on his own before we got married, but seeing how he acts now, I doubt he lived a normal life. If I point out what he's doing, he'll begrudgingly pick up his things. The next day, he'll completely forget what I said and do the same thing all over again. I gave up on fixing his bad habits and just stopped pointing them out. More dangerous than him was my mother-in-law. When Lucas and I went to my parents to announce that we planned on getting married, my parents very emotionally told him to please take care of me from now on. But when I went to his mother's house, she stood at the front door, glared at me, and said, "You don't suit my son. You should be grateful I'm letting you marry him." It was as if she wanted to fight me. She didn't let me into her house. That moment has been floating above my head like a dark cloud since then, but I thought that things would work out if we got married. And that's how things got to be as they are now. One Sunday, around a month after our wedding, some of my friends came over to visit. They were precious friends of mine who'd sleep over at my house often when I was living on my own. Well, I say sleep over, but we'd spend the whole night talking and completely forget to sleep. I had told Lucas that my friends would be coming over in advance, so I thought he'd spend the day playing games on his phone in our bedroom. But Lucas dressed up, did his hair, and joined my circle of friends. My husband is a salesman. He knows how to talk, so my friends were very happy that he joined the conversation. I was grateful for this unusual gesture of his. My friends had brought us a cake, so I cut it into pieces and served it to everyone. Just as I was about to take my first bite out of my slice of cake, our doorbell rang. To check whether we really had a visitor, I quickly checked our security camera. It was my mother-in-law. Confused, I opened the door. My mother-in-law scuttered into our apartment without even saying hello. When she saw my friends in our living room, she smiled widely. It was such a strange sight to see. It was like looking up into the sky and seeing two moons. "Oh, you had guests. Hello." "Some of Ava's friends came over today." "What lovely friends she has." My mother-in-law casually sat in my seat. "Oh, serving such a cheap cake like this. How embarrassing. Ava, go to a nice bakery and buy us a new cake, and get something to give to your friends to take home with them." My best friend Kate's face went stiff. She was the one who had brought the cake. Internally apologizing to Kate, I went to my room to pick up my wallet. "Don't worry, we just came because we wanted to catch up with Ava." Kate shrugged off my mother-in-law's suggestion with a smile. Her eyes weren't smiling though. But my mother-in-law didn't read the room, so she continued. "I'm really sorry. Ava is always such a useless wife. That reminds me, last time..." She went off on a rant about me. Lucas nodded along and agreed with everything she said. He didn't defend me at all. The air in the room felt so heavy at some point that I couldn't take it anymore. When the rant had gone on for an hour, Kate had reached her limit. "We should head out now. Thank you for letting us come over." "Please come again. I will make sure Ava prepares for you better next time." My mother-in-law's rant didn't seem like it was going to end anytime soon, so my friends began preparing to leave. I walked my friends out to the entrance of my building. "I'm so sorry. I didn't think she'd come." I apologized to my friends as we rode the elevator to the ground floor. "You're not at fault. Yeah, the root of all of this is that old lady. We kept trying to stop her, but she just couldn't get a hint. She tries to make herself look good, but her horrible personality kept showing." My friends criticized Lucas's mother the whole way down. The only person who didn't speak was Kate. I thought she probably didn't feel like talking now, so I decided I'd call her again later to apologize. I didn't know when my mother-in-law would show up at our apartment again, so my friends and I promised each other that next time we'd meet somewhere out. Lucas's mother is like a landmine. You never know when you'll step on one, and once you do, it's too late. As I rode the elevator back up to our apartment, I prayed that she'd leave soon, but not only did my wish not come true that night, things just got worse. She used to come over only once a month, but she began visiting us once a week. She even began sleeping over on the weekends. At first, I listened to what she said, but at some point, her insistent complaints became too much. My mother-in-law would sit around all day and only prepare dinner. I would avoid her by saying I have to work and staying in my home office as much as possible. Ultimately, she decided I was a useless wife. She began visiting even more frequently, to the point she would come once every 3 days. As I would be in my office working, she would knock and open the door, ready to argue with me. Whether it would be that I need to teach her how to use the TV remote, or that she didn't know where the tea was in the kitchen, she always had a reason to complain and argue with me. She would do that even when I was in the middle of work meetings. My bosses got angry at me many times. "Can you please tell your mom not to come into my room while I'm working? I can't get my work done." I tried asking Lucas for help one night after dinner. "Well, Mom is probably lonely. Keep her company." "Do you think I have time to keep her company while I'm working?" "You can at least spare her a minute, right? You're her daughter-in-law after all." Lucas would speak to me in an annoyed tone without tearing his eyes off his cell phone screen. I learned that asking him for help would get me nowhere. Then, the worst thing possible happened. "My mom will be living with us starting tomorrow." No discussion, no asking. He had decided. I had held back on so much until now, but I finally couldn't take it anymore. "I told you that I've been having trouble with her. I've told you so many times. So how could you make the decision without asking me?" Surprised by my sudden yelling, Lucas stood up from the sofa and walked towards me. "Mom lives on her own, you know. Don't you feel bad for her?" "In that case, tell her what I keep asking you to." "You should just deal with it." There aren't many people who have felt as angry as I did in that moment. I slammed the living room door and then moved the TV, the Blu-ray player, and a blanket from our bedroom into my office. Is there any way to avoid seeing my mother-in-law as much as possible? I laid on the small sofa bed in my office and wondered, but nothing would come to mind. In the end, Lucas prepared a room for her. When my mother-in-law and the movers came with their things, I said I wasn't feeling well and I didn't leave my office. They badmouthed me the entire time they were unpacking Lucas's mother's luggage. I was frustrated and angry. I didn't even have the energy to complain to my friends. I just stayed in my bed all day. The next day, knowing I couldn't hide from Lucas's mother forever, I went out to prepare breakfast. I made toast, bacon and eggs, and cut up some fruit. It was a no-nonsense breakfast. I went over to wake up Lucas as usual. Him and I have separate beds, so we can sleep better, but my mother-in-law was sleeping in my bed. Is this for real? Trying to suppress the anger already building up inside me, I woke the two of them up. "Good morning. I'm sorry that I was feeling unwell yesterday and wasn't able to help you." "Yeah, really. You can't even take care of your own health. How immature can you be?" "Breathe, Ava. Just breathe." I walked to the dining room with a tight smile on my face. My mother-in-law followed behind and let out a deep sigh when she saw the breakfast. "This is too simple, and you can't even clean?" I stayed quiet and looked at Lucas for help, but he made a face as if he didn't know what was going on and began eating breakfast. I did all I could to force my face into a smile. "I'll clean the house first thing tomorrow." "Start from the toilet." My smile froze. I felt like my head was going to explode from anger. After cleaning up the dishes and sending off my husband to work, I went into my home office and threw a pillow at the wall. I need to resolve this realistically, little by little. First, I need to make sure she doesn't enter my office. To prepare, I call a locksmith. They luckily said they could come over within an hour. My mother-in-law criticized me a lot after the locksmith finished installing a lock on my door, but I just smiled and told her my bosses had asked me to do that. I decided I would do my very best to make our cohabitation successful, but it wasn't easy. She continued to insult the way I did chores, all the while not helping out at all. Lucas didn't just agree with her, he'd completely get carried away. I didn't expect her to give us money for living expenses, but unfortunately, Lucas stopped contributing to our household money as well. My husband even asked me for spending money for him and his mother. Nothing made sense. The word divorce began circling around my brain. Then one day, I saw a notification appear on Lucas's phone lock screen, which was laying on the living room coffee table. It was a message from my best friend Kate. My mother-in-law had gone to sleep early and Lucas was in the bathroom, so I quickly unlocked and checked his phone. He had been texting Kate a lot. There were many heart emojis in his text to her. As I used my phone to take photos of all of their texts, I heard my husband getting out of the bathroom. When my husband came to the living room, I told him some urgent work came in and that he should go to sleep first. I then went into my office and called Kate. Our phone call lasted 2.5 hours. After hanging up, I let out a deep sigh. I have no choice but to use force. Lucas had to leave for a business trip early the next morning. He wouldn't be back until the evening the next day. Very sure that my plan would be a success, I slept peacefully that night after my phone call with Kate. The next day, I prepared breakfast before sending off my husband. "What's with this breakfast?" my mother-in-law screamed as she looked at what I had cooked. This morning, I had prepared potato salad with loads of mayonnaise. On the side, there was a buttercream cake. It was a very fatty breakfast menu that I'm sure will make most stomachs turn upside down. Well, no matter what I cook, she'll complain anyway. Trying to ignore my own stomach ache as I ate, I said, "Doesn't it taste good?" "I can't eat this." "Do what you want." I didn't need to look at her. I knew what kind of face she was making. I ignored everything she said after and left the dining room. For lunch, I made croissant sandwiches with sliced ham and leftover potato salad from breakfast. I also made a very spicy curry soup. For dessert, I made pudding. Before eating, I apologized to my stomach for what I was putting it through. Of course, my mother-in-law didn't eat. No, it's more apt to say she couldn't eat. I ignored her screams. I had to win this battle of selfishness no matter what. I took some stomach medicine as soon as I got back into my office. For dinner, I made extra buttery garlic bread, sirloin steak, and fried potatoes. As a side, I made pumpkin soup and made sure to add extra olive oil. As my mother-in-law looked at what I had prepared, she screamed so much that I couldn't even understand what language she was speaking anymore. It was finally time. The next morning, I made another very fatty breakfast. My mother-in-law said to me, "It was wrong of me to let someone like you enter our family. My son and I will continue to live here, so get out now." I restrained myself from jumping up and down in excitement. I pulled out divorce papers, which Lucas had signed before when he once drunkenly argued with me. She gave a wide, satisfied smile. I made a mental Hail Mary. She double-checked that I had filled out all of my sections correctly. "Can I leave now?" "I told you to." "Well then." I grabbed my phone and told the movers, which I had called in advance, to come to our apartment. They quickly arrived and began gathering my belongings in their moving truck. My mother-in-law was stunned, but she didn't make a fuss. Everything was over within an hour. I grabbed my cell phone and purse and left that apartment behind. By the time I filed my divorce documents at City Hall and made it to my apartment, the movers had already finished dropping off everything inside. I thanked them as they left and quickly got to announcing my divorce to my friends. It was Saturday, so my friends came over to my new apartment. "Congrats to your victory! Cheers!" We poured each other glasses of wine and ordered delivery for dinner. Now that I was able to go back to the life I had before getting married, I was so grateful that I had decided to get divorced. Just as I was starting to feel a nice buzz from the wine, my phone rang. It was my ex-husband. He was most likely shocked when he got back home and saw all my things gone from the apartment. I showed my phone screen to my friends. Doing my very best to hold back my laughter, I answered the call. "What?" "What is going on? All our stuff is gone." He prioritized the furniture over everything else. I lightheartedly said, "I just took everything I had bought us. You're the one who was using all my things." "You!" "I can't live with you and your mother, so I left." After an uncomfortable moment of silence, he began cursing at me. Even though I hadn't put the phone on speaker, Lucas was yelling so loudly that my friends could clearly hear what he was saying. I kept my phone at a distance from my head to protect my eardrums. After some time, he went quiet. He seemed to have run out of breath. "I'm hanging up now." It was time for me to move to the next stage of my plan, so I began hanging up. "You! It was a mistake marrying you. My mom and I will live in this home, so don't step foot here ever again." My husband yelled through the phone and hung up. Just a few hours ago, my mother-in-law had said the same thing to me. They really are related. He probably didn't realize we were officially divorced yet. As I hung up the phone, my friends excitedly awaited the next step of my plan. Less than 1 minute later, Kate received a call from Lucas. The entire room burst out into laughter. Actually, my ex-husband was trying to have an affair with my best friend. He would flirt with her and buy her expensive presents. She was getting very annoyed of him. I found this all out when I called her the other day, and that was the last straw that had really pushed me to get a divorce. Kate was someone way more important to me than my ex-husband ever was. You're all laughing, but this is bad. Lucas doesn't know anything. So he said he reserved a hotel for the two of us yesterday and was waiting for me. Kate refused the call. Getting annoyed after Lucas tried to call her over 10 times, Kate eventually turned off her phone. Until I spoke to you, I thought he was actually going on a business trip. I'm really sorry about all this. He had invited Kate on the perfect day, but Kate was really annoyed with him, so I couldn't tell her that. Well, as exchange for the troubles, at least he got you many gifts. They make me feel so gross. I don't want any of them. Kate decided to take the pile of gifts she had received from Lucas to a pawn shop. After spending time joking around and guessing how much Kate would receive from the pawn shop, we went to sleep. The next day, we all carried Kate's gift from Lucas to the pawn shop and excitedly awaited to see whose prediction would be correct. These are all unopened and unused, so I'm sure they'll sell well. How much can you give us for them? The pawn shop staff calculated that they could give us $23,000. We burst into laughter and surprised screams. It was more than any of us had imagined. We decided to use it to go on a luxurious girls' trip. My stress was finally gone, and I was just settling into my single life when I got a call from my ex-husband. I knew he was going to call me eventually. I calmly picked up. What is it?
What's with the rent for this place?
Lucas was obviously very upset. Actually, the apartment building we had been living in belonged to my uncle, so he gave us a big discount on rent. We had used my bank account to pay for rent and all other living expenses, so Lucas and his mother didn't know how much living in the apartment really cost. Well, it's such a fancy apartment building. $3,750 in rent is only natural.
No, this apartment, didn't you buy it?
There's no way I could afford to buy it with my salary. Have some common sense. He continued to make excuses.
I'm a salesman, so I have to treat clients to meals and things, so I don't have money.
You haven't been giving me any money for our living expenses these past few months, so use that.
That's not enough for the rent, so...
He couldn't get his words out straight. There was no way he'd directly tell me that he had taken out loans to buy expensive presents to charm Kate into being his mistress, but I knew everything. I shut down all his excuses. That's too bad. Bye.
Wait! I want you to come back. Let's talk this through. We're married, right? Please.
He was half crying at this point, but he's a stranger to me now. We have nothing to do with each other. I let out a deep breath and then released all the stress I had felt because of him and his mother when I screamed, "If you really think we're still married, check with City Hall." Feeling refreshed, I ended the phone call. I blocked Lucas's phone number. I have no idea what happened to him after. He's a stranger to me now. I'm now happily living in the penthouse suite of another apartment building my uncle owns. Thank you for watching.